Chapter 7, Between a Dock and a Heart Place. When Dr. Nix had sent me home, I got the distinct impression that he thought we needed a break from each other. His last words to me were, "Don't overdo it." With my mother standing beside me, there was little chance of that. Of course, my time in RPA was not yet done. My first checkup was scheduled in 2 weeks. Dr. Nix reminded Mum and I as we left that I was to take it easy and not get too excited, despite the obvious temptation to do so. He spoke to me as my doctor, but in a very fatherly way. Always the healer. But as September edged into October, I began thinking about the prospect of turning 9 in November. Up until then, and taking my cue from Dr. Nix and my parents, I tried really hard not to get ahead of myself. Arriving home with Mum that first day back, I didn't know what to expect. After all, 4 weeks is a long time, and I had never been anywhere for so long. The house itself didn't look any different. But as sure as eggs, it felt different. I guess the feeling of home never leaves you at that age, but it would take a few more days for it to set in. Being back at school was a little strange too. Before RPA, school and home was my whole world. A world which, on the day I left, I had wondered, well, you know. But good times and good signs were upon us. Most importantly for my mother was the return of my appetite, which I had lost somewhere along the corridors of RPA. I ate like a horse and even developed a taste for new delicacies like peanut butter, which I never expressed a liking for before. I think in the first 2 weeks home I tried on just about everything Mum prepared. Mum's home-style cooking was for me a supercharged, super delicious change. A welcome change to sheep's brains and tripe. They called it my recovery diet. I had another word for it. Just the mention of those meals sends my taste buds back to the wards of RPA. Such was the hospital diet of the day, along with overcooked vegetables. Dessert was nearly always jelly, tinned fruit, and custard. But for me and my family, Mum's cooking was where TLC and nutrition became as one. That Christmas, Nana Bailey organized for me to accompany her on an overnight train trip to Kyogle on the northern tablelands of New South Wales. Christmas, summertime, and a real holiday. Kyogle is dairy country and was home to my Auntie Maud, Uncle Holly and cousins Edna, Kevin, and Danny. Danny was just 2 months older than me. So we instantly became great mates. It was a gift as much as a holiday. The beautiful countryside, the picture postcard view of their farm. A picture made complete by the dairy cattle, newborn calves, corn on the cob, watermelons, mangoes, and pineapples. All growing around the homestead. To me it was a wonder, a rural Garden of Eden. So peaceful. The beauty of the paddocks and surrounding hills. The sound of bird life and animals. And a myriad of places to explore. The daily collection of the milk canisters by the dairy farmer's co-op truck. The taste of fresh separated cream in the collection vat. Homemade scones with homemade blackberry jam. Coupled with cream fresh from the dairy. The blackberries, growing in roadside outcrops. Everything that came out of Aunt Maud's kitchen smelt, tasted, and looked delicious. Not surprisingly, I was first to the table at mealtimes. The township of Kyogle itself was the subject of a weekly visit each Monday to conduct shopping and other errands. I became fascinated with one of the local shops called Juna's. It had a docket shopping trolley that moved across the ceiling on a wire from various counters to and from the cashier's office. The store operated in conjunction with the community dairy cooperative. Every day seemed more idyllic than the day before. Particularly the way everyone welcomed or greeted me as one of the family. Everything about the place was enchanting for a 9-year-old city slicker. But when you're on a farm you work. And Uncle Holly made sure I, along with Danny, had my set of chores. Unlike home, the chores made my day. It was my job to accompany my cousin Danny, to help round up the cows at 2 p.m. of each day for milking. Not that the cows needed much rounding. They pretty much knew the drill. You could set your watch by them. But for a 9-year-old, it was a job to be done and done properly. I took it very seriously. On time and ready to go at a moment's notice, that was me. And now for the true blue truth. There's something about country cooking and food fresh from the farm to the plate. Every day was like going to the neighbors or friends for a feed, and Aunt Maud, true to her lineage, was quite the cook. But it was the fruit, the watermelon, and the mangoes that I couldn't get enough of. There's nothing quite like sitting around devouring watermelon to make a friendship after the chores were done. Danny, recognizing his role as my host, always had some place, activity, or animal to show me. He was not just a good host and a mate, but I later found out he was also adopted. He was very eager for me to meet the carpet snake they kept in the barn to help keep mice and rats in check. That reptile just fascinated me. Up there in the rafters, fast asleep or looking decidedly sleepy. Not a worry in the world and no danger to yours truly. But you had to learn about snakes on a farm for your own protection. Later in my stay, Uncle Hully killed a snake he spotted a little too close to where I was wandering in one of the paddocks. I swear I didn't see a thing, until he swung the shovel. Uncle Hully was very proud of his vegetable garden and corn patch. One evening he called for all us kids to go inside. He was about to evict a mob of pesky cockatoos and other birds who had arrived uninvited in his corn patch. To my surprise, he had a double-barrel shotgun in one hand and shells in the other. So, we stood near him on an adjacent veranda. He fired both barrels into the air, making a terrific cracking sound. He may well have fired a starter's gun. I know I jumped. But it did the job, as more than a dozen or so startled cockatoos took flight, screeching their way to parts unknown. As he went inside the house with his rifle, he looked at Kevin, Danny, and me saying, that'll keep them away for a while, won't it, fellas?" Kevin and Danny replied, "Yeah, sure will, Dad." The boys knew the drill. Out of the goodness of his heart, Uncle Hully allowed me to take home from his aviary a red, blue, and green Eastern Rosella. He was still a fledgling but had already earned the name Joey. He and I traveled back to Sydney separately on the overnight train. Joey in the guard's van parcel enclosure and me in the passenger carriage with Nana. I was so proud of Joey, who would sit on my shoulder from the get-go, to wherever I went around the house. Just like Long John Silver's parrot in Treasure Island. However, he drew the line at pieces of 8. I did try hard to teach him that phrase. Apparently talking was for parrots and not part of a well-bred Rosella's behavior. Joey took up residency in a large cage Dad built to house him in the backyard. He was an attention seeker from the start, particularly from the vantage point of my shoulder. Sometimes he could be a little cantankerous and would bite my ear when bored or when it was time to go back to his perch. He lived for 10 years, by which time I was 18. He was both a friend and a fiend, depending on his mood. I loved him just the same. Over the years the little charmer even managed to take pride of place over our cat and dog. Years later, when Uncle Hully passed away, my Aunt Maud sold the dairy farm and established a guest house in Kyogle. Several members of my family stayed with her, as we continued the warm and loving relationship with this truly lovely woman. Family snapshots: brothers Paddy and Mark. Of all my family, Patrick was the world traveller. If Kevin was the Irish leprechaun of the family, Paddy, as he was known, was the Irish rover. From 1965 he began his journey, travelling all over Australia, New Zealand, England, and South Africa. Paddy was fearless and, like John, strong and fit. When he left school in 1959, he quickly got work wherever he went. Starting at a newsagent and not long after installing TV aerials. If there was a thriving cottage industry in Australia at that time, it was installing television aerials for the eager public. Always the sharp dresser with great clothes sense, he used to pay me 2 bob, 20 cents, to clean and polish his shoes for the Saturday night dances. It was the major source of revenue for my Saturday afternoon cinema fund. His other payday treat was for me to go to the corner shop and return with a double malted chocolate milkshake. Like all of us kids, Paddy knew what it meant to extend a helping hand. From aerial installation he moved to working in the shunting yards at Port Kembla, a dangerous job but with better pay. From there, Let's see if I've got this right. He moved to working in the mines at Mount Tom Price in Western Australia, then to New Zealand at Lake Manapori, then went to the UK, before finally settling in South Africa, where he began working in mine safety. Married with 2 young daughters, Paddy returned to Australia in the late 1970s and went to work in the mines in the Illawarra. There he joined his brothers, Kevin, John, and Mark. Fittingly, they would work out their time together in the mining industry. As time went by, Paddy would become the focal point of the Ryan family. Particularly after our parents passed. If you knew him, and at times it seemed like half the Illawarra did, it would be as you would expect. Through his larger-than-life personality, his energy, sense of fun and loving embrace of all things family. Finally, my brother Mark. A true artist, artisan, and an angel in my life. Dad always said that Mark had a special gift. Even in his final years, Dad thought of nothing better than spending time with Mark in his workshop. Both men were true artisans. To view anything Mark builds or designs is to view a thing beautifully made. His furniture is breathtaking and unique. Mark works everything to plan, as you would expect from an artisan or artist. On completion of his apprenticeship, Mark soon became a highly regarded boilermaker. He married Janice in 1963 and built their home from scratch, with a young son and a daughter soon to follow. Like all the Ryans, Mark suffered at the hands of the Catholic Church. As a student, although nothing approaching the beating and humiliations John and Patrick received, but later when he married. Mark, like all his brothers and sisters, has a superb moral compass. He also knew what his older siblings had been through. Throughout his life, Mark has contributed to communities as well as his family and many other families. He has done so with his incredible workmanship, energy, and good heart. And the furniture and house or property fittings he has built and installed over the years amazes me to this day. Not just his home, but for the homes of his children. And like all the Ryans, Mark loves a chat. Whenever the two of us get together, it's all about recounting tall tales, memories, and a family that knows no bounds. Getting on in the 50s. Not a lot changed between the generations, and kids in the 50s and the well-worn paths of their parents. Boys often followed their father's line of work or went into the same business as their old man. Sometimes, but not always. Whatever work a young bloke sought, it was usually after talking it over with his parents. The jobs were there for the taking, it was just a matter of choosing wisely. Which meant getting the okay from mum and dad. Even if it involved a few false starts. The family hierarchy was well established, you might even say entrenched. Which meant that boys and girls left school knowing that whatever line of work they went into, it would be with their parents' say-so. Remember, no internet or social media. Which meant very little of the outside world ever made it past the front door without parental approval. At least until television arrived. It was all about expectations. Expectations engendered by your gender. So the boys moved into the trades or the commercial world, while girls followed their mothers into domesticity, after a period of 3 or 4 years of gainful employment. But the expectations didn't end there. Rites of passage also had to be navigated, whether you were male or female. There were 2 boxes you needed to tick. And they were considered mandatory. Both were to be done under the auspices of your parents. They were the gateway to the full membership into the adult world. Firstly, your 21st birthday, when you got your own key to the front door. And then the really big one, your wedding. Unlike today with its bridezillas, a wedding was the big day for the man too. And this at a time when marriages were considered to be made in heaven. After that, with any luck, you were on your own. Unless of course you couldn't afford a roof over your head. In that case, you and your spouse moved back in with mum and dad or your in-laws. Children of course were to be partially seen and occasionally heard. They were expected to be polite, obedient, and respectful of their elders. Particularly when they came calling. Respect was the other coin of the realm, and like your wage, you had to earn it. No free handouts on that one. Male or female, you had to prove you could make the grade. Self-confidence too, was something you acquired over time and it didn't come wrapped in cotton wool. Adults, in a semi-egalitarian sense, ruled. Teenagers ceased to exist after they turned 15 and left school to get a job. At which point the boys became, the young bloke and the girls, you young lady. Only the rich went to university. The rest of us had to pass what was called the intermediate if you wanted to get a good job or apprenticeship. For the girls there was secretarial training or working in a shop. If you were deemed smart enough you lasted another 2 years, until you got to do your leaving certificate. Many did, which allowed them to sit for an entrance exam for a job for life. Otherwise known as the public service. Neighborhoods, yours, mine or ours, were nearly always white. Nearly always Anglo-Saxon and to the best of everyone's knowledge straight or normal. You didn't mix above your social station and only below if you needed to demonstrate how egalitarian you were. Or in the parlance of the times, to prove you were all right. Australians as a rule were very concerned with their rights back then. She'll be right. You'll be right. I'll see you right, were all expressions of our desperate need to be, well, right. And to be referred to as all right was the nearest thing you had to a knighthood. The majority who knew English spoke Strine. English was only used for correspondence. Which if it wasn't carried out in person, was nearly always done in pen and ink. Or on special occasions a typewriter. Any other language was deemed an object of light-hearted banter or suspicion. How you spoke, how you dressed and how you behaved were 3 of the 4 brushes that tarred you for life. The 4th was religion. Sectarianism, along with racism and sexism was rife. All aided and abetted by all the various denominations. If you were RC, it meant you were either Roman Catholic or just lucky. Tyke was another somewhat dubious moniker. If you were AP, you were Protestant. Which meant you were C of E, a Metho, or a press button. Officially Church of England, Methodist, or Presbyterian. There were others of course, but generally they were seen as wowzers. For a time, there was some mysterious old bloke writing eternity on the streets of Sydney. But that was about as close as most Australians got to God during daylight.